and welcome to Lesson 8 for Math 13X. So we've got these measures of variation. So as you can see these scores, it goes up by 5 and goes up by 5. So that's basically saying there's a 5-point gap between them. So that's what variation is talking about. And there's 3 of them. First of all, the range. The range is the easiest to find. That's just the biggest number minus the smallest number. So for the range, it's just the biggest number minus the smallest number. And we're done with the range. Now for both the variance and the standard deviation, I first need to find the mean. So the mean, or x bar, is equal to 0 plus 5 plus 10. So add up all of the scores. And since there's 3 scores, divide by 3. So this will be 15 plus 0, so that means it's 15 on the top. And 15 divided by 3 is 5. Okay, now to do the variance and then the standard deviation. So for the variance, so basically you just take each score one at a time, subtract the mean, and square it. So it's going to go 0 minus the mean is 5, and then square it. And then go to the next score, parentheses, 5 minus 5, and square it. So each time you take the score minus the mean and square it. And then next will be 10 minus the average and square it. And there's 3 scores, 1, 2, 3, and the formula is you then divide by the number of scores minus 1. So this is going to be, looks like I'm just going to have to uncover Steph Curry right here in my next example because I don't have enough space. So this is going to be negative 5 squared, which is 25. This is just going to be 0. And this is going to be 5 squared, which is 25. And then on the bottom, it's 3 minus 1, so that's 2. And then to finish this one, it's basically just 25 plus 25, so that's 50. And 50 divided by 2 is 25. So there is the variance. So we have the range and the variance so far, and we've done the hard part. Now for the easy part, the standard deviation. And for standard deviation, that's a lot of letters to write out every time. So instead we just use the letter S for standard deviation. And because we already did this work, the standard deviation is just the square root of this. So take the square root of 25. Now, of course, I do know the square root of 25 is 5, but quite often it turns out to be a decimal. So for square root, first of all, turn the calculator on. And the square root is right here. You do have to put second square root and then do the square root of 25. And it equals 5. Now, this next part is just a common mistake that students make, and I just want to show you. So let's say you were supposed to have, for whatever reason, so this is like a little pop-up ad for the calculator. Suppose you're supposed to have the square root of 25 plus 2. And the 25 is inside the square root, but the 2 is not. So when you do the square root, so second square root, 25, and if you put plus 2, it's going to keep making the square root. So look at how the square root just keeps continuing and continuing, and that's not what I wanted. I wanted square root of 25, and the little arrow right here is saying if you go to the right, it will stop the square root, and then plus 2. So this means take the square root of 25, which is 5, plus 2, and it should equal 7. Oh, good job, calculator. Okay, so we've now got the standard deviation. All right, now we're going to do the same thing with Steph Curry's points per game, but we're going to use a calculator. So first of all, go to Stat and then Edit. And of course, I have this left over from some other problem. So just go up to the L1 and then use Clear. And now it's cleared out. So now type in the new numbers. 17 points, 31 points, 25, 14, 27, 31, 15, 29, 25, 31, 18, 20, 15, and 32. So that seems to be 14 basketball games. That says 14. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14 games. And then I'm just going to go backwards through the list to make sure I typed them in right. So earlier when I was doing, okay, I'm trying to multitask and I'm not very good at it. Let me just finish this. Okay, earlier when I was doing this by hand, and you might say, well, if the calculator could do it, then why don't you just use the calculator? So for one thing, these videos are meant for all of Hartnell's Math 13 students. And some teachers insist that you use just the formulas. Personally, I have students do it one time with the formula, and from then on, always with the calculator. So once I've typed the numbers in the list, then go to Stat, move over to Calculate, and use number 1. And just as a reminder, if this says something else, like maybe it's even blank, then just put second and the number 1, and now it will say L1. And then this frequency thing, that should be just left blank. And then go to Calculate. So this is his average, which is actually from the previous video. We did average. And this right here, the 6.836, that's the standard deviation. So let me just write down that part. The standard deviation S equals 6.836. So even though it says X, just ignore the X. S equals the 6.836. And then for the range, that's just the biggest minus the smallest. And if you just scroll down, right there's the biggest, 32. And right there is the smallest, 14. So I just need 32 minus 14. And that is an 18. So the range is 18. And the standard deviation is 6.836. So when I did the first example, I did the variance first and then took the square root of it to get the standard deviation. Well, if you know the standard deviation, then you could square it. 5 squared is 25. That gives us the variance. So for the variance, that's just going to be the 6.836 squared. So 6.836, and then the squared is over here. It says x squared, but it's not going to put an x. It's just going to put a square. So that's the 6.836 squared, which equals 46.731. Okay, so that was for Steph Curry, and now how about for LeBron James? So basically, we just go through the same steps. When I go to put in the data, so go to the edit, in case I need to use Steph Curry's scores again, I'm not going to erase it. I'm just going to move over here to list 2, and list 2 will be for LeBron. So 26 and 20 and 25, 40, 18, 29, 31, 19, 26, 31, 34, 28, 30, 25, and 21. So this says that for LeBron, I actually chose 15 games. So let me see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. Yes, I did, 15. Okay, then go to Stat, Calculate, and now I need to change this to list 2. So now just put second and the number 2, and now it's got list 2. So go to the Calculate, and then he averages, or at least for those 15 games, he averaged 26.867. And then the S is 5.998. So S, and right now LeBron's saying, hey, you just covered up my picture. Sorry. 5.998. And then for the range, just scroll down. The biggest score was 40 points in a basketball game, and the smallest was 18. So put second, quit to get back to the home screen, and then 40 minus 18 is 22. And then finally for the variance, that's just the standard deviation squared. So 5.998, and then use the squared over here. So it's a 35.976. All right, the last question is, which basketball player is more consistent? So the best way to measure consistency is to use the standard deviation. So you look at this for LeBron and this for Steph Curry. And whichever one is smaller, that means they're more consistent. So this is the smaller out of the two, so that means that LeBron is more consistent. So LeBron, in case you didn't know it's LeBron James, I'll put the full name. LeBron James is more consistent because his standard deviation, so this is the explain part, is smaller than Steph Curry's. All right, we're done.